call the meeting, the Gurnee Village Board, regular meeting of November 14, 2022. Roll call, please.
Garner.
Here.
O'Brien.
Present.
Balmas.
Present.
Thorstensen.
Here.
Woodside.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
6 present.
You'd all stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Welcome, everybody. So we have an agenda that we generally follow, but in light of the fact that we have so many people here tonight, usually we have public comment at the end of the meeting, but in deference to your time and maybe not wanting to sit through a hotel ordinance discussion, we'd like to hear you first. So I'd like to, just by way for introduction, and I'm guessing that most of you are here for the Trans-Chicago proposed development for Highway 21, Route 21, and Manchester, right? And yes, that was a rhetorical question, but but public comment's not just meant for that. I mean, if anybody else has a public comment about something else, you could certainly step to the microphone and state your name. So a couple of things. I'd like to just give you a short history about just not necessarily Trans-Chicago, but how the process works. So with reference to a parcel of property, as many would know, there's a private owner, and then a buyer comes along and makes a proposal. They reach a contract. And they then have a contract, and then generally there's a period of time which is called a due diligence period, where the buyer has the opportunity to investigate the property to see whether or not it would fit for their particular use. And that could be a wide variety of things. That could be soil borings, that could be meeting with the city, with the village. It could be any number of things for them to determine whether or not this particular development would work for them. And once they get beyond that point, and if they decide they believe it could work for them, they then, if it's necessary, and not always necessary, in some cases, some buyers and owners can develop by right on a parcel of property without coming to the village other than for building permits. However, in many cases, and it's true in Trans-Chicago's case, is that they needed to come to the village for some permission to do certain things. And the general process that's followed is that they file an initial petition with the village, and then staff reviews that petition. They go through to make sure that the basic items from our code, our comprehensive plan, other things are looked at. And they meet with the petitioner to discuss those things. And once that comes to a point of resolution, or where the petitioner says, I want to proceed, in this case, the first step is to come before the Planning and Zoning Board. We refer to them as PCB. And they come, and it's 7 individuals that sit right where we sit. And the village puts out a notice. The statute requires that we provide notice within 500 feet of the property, and then we also have to place signage on the property itself to say that there's a meeting that will be regarding this property. So in this particular case with Trans-Chicago, on October 12th, there was a meeting before the Planning and Zoning Board where the petitioner, the owner, or the buyer of the property, or proposed buyer, made a presentation. And then the public, just like you, had the opportunity to make statements. And that entire meeting was recorded, and then that detail is provided to us as the village board. But then obviously the Planning and Zoning Board then had the opportunity to hear what they had to say, and then they voted that night. And as a result of that vote, and again, in most cases, the Planning and Zoning Board is a recommending body. That means that in most cases, they don't make the final decision. The village board does. And in that case, in most of the items, except for a couple of the variances, they forwarded a favorable recommendation to the village board. And it's a recommendation, and that's it. However, from the village board's perspective, We respect what they do. We honor what they do. They investigate. They review material. They talk to staff. So when they make a decision, we don't take it lightly, but it's not binding on us. We then, as a board, and you have done a good job. Obviously, tonight you've done a great job. We've received emails, letters, telephone calls, and all of those things that you've said make it into the packet of each of the board members that they have tonight, for instance. Even though tonight we will not consider Trans-Chicago is not on the agenda, no decision will be made by the board tonight. That just it's not coming up. It's scheduled for...
Tentatively scheduled for the 28th.
So it's tentatively scheduled for the 28th, 2 weeks from tonight. So we say tentatively, and just to keep track on our website to make sure that if for some reason something comes up where it's required to be continued, we'll do our best to communicate that publicly, but to communicate it to each of you individually would be difficult. So please pay attention to that. But at this point, we're expecting that meeting to occur. It'll start at 7 p.m., and the petitioner will have an opportunity on the 28th to make a presentation just like they made to the Planning and Zoning Board. They'll make that same presentation or similar presentation to us. You will then have an opportunity to make comments like you can make comments tonight during public comment. At the end of that, there'll be likely would be a decision made by the village board in terms of whether or not they would be, Trans-Chicago would be allowed to develop what they're proposing. So just a couple of suggestions as far as public comment is concerned so that we can hear your thoughts and comments, and we want to hear your thoughts and comments. And knowing each of the individual board members, I know that they're interested and they represent the residents of Gurnee, all of Gurnee, and they're concerned and interested in what you have to say. So what's helpful for us is that if you have someone that speaks on your behalf, like if you're a particular HOA, if there's someone that can summarize your points or state your points, that's helpful for us. However, it's not required. If every single one of you wanted to come to the microphone and say what you think is important, I'm sad to say for myself personally that I'd have to listen to each one of you. That's just the way it is, and you'd have to listen to each one of you. So, but I can't tell you you can't, right? It's a free country, and it's free speech. And it's important to us, like I said. This isn't an exercise from my perspective in futility because you're concerned and you want to be heard. And from all of our perspective is that we're looking to respect and honor what you have to say. And of course, we expect that in return. We're neighbors, we're residents of Gurnee, just like you guys are, and are concerned about the way our village goes, or we wouldn't be doing this job that we get paid so highly for. So a couple things more about Trans-Chicago. Again, we represent the whole village. I've read your comments, understand your concerns, especially being near to the development. On a broader picture as well, you'll hear some comments from the petitioner in 2 weeks that'll talk about the installation of a stoplight at Manchester and Route 21. It's not a guarantee, but a development, not necessarily this development. If it occurs, the extra traffic that'll be generated at that intersection would then allow for a stoplight probably to be installed, which is important to the board and to me for the safety of residents and to the fire department. So you'll hear that comment, and I understand that obviously you have other comments about that. And some of the comments about that the fire department makes a lot of noise around their neighborhood because they have to blast their sirens to get onto Route 21. Well, that probably will be less. But in any event, that's one thing. And of course, on the other side is that how much revenue do we need? And I agree with that. It's like, from our perspective, however, it's again, the whole village. We're looking for providing services to everybody and that we do our best to balance the development in town with the residents' needs and their enjoyment where they live. And sometimes that's not a real easy job. I can just tell you that having done it for a number of years, it's tough. But nonetheless, that doesn't and shouldn't stop you from voicing your concerns and what you think is important to you. I don't live in your home. I don't live in Heather Ridge, or the other neighboring communities. So it's good that you say something, and we do listen. So those are the parameters. So instead of me talking longer, why don't we start with, like I said, if you'd like to come to the microphone and make a statement, you just need to state your name. Please direct your comments directly to the board. Don't expect a response. It's not very fulfilling in the way this works. When you make a public comment, I won't answer a question generally, and neither will the board. It just ends up kind of getting bogged down on a back and forth. So we want to hear what you have to say. There's a recording that's done of this meeting, so that'll be done that. So it's important to talk right into the microphone, and we'll be able to have that record for our use.
Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor, the only thing I would also add, because we are required to follow the Open Meetings Act, it's really not a prerogative that the board isn't going to be able to answer questions. It's really a legal requirement. Because this is not an agenda item, the board can hear all the discussion that we have time to receive, but they will not be able to answer, and it's not disrespect out of the form of the question. It's just the fact that it isn't an agenda item. So just understand that. It's just the law. It's not a decision that the mayor or any other trustee is going to make. That will be different once the item is on an agenda item. And at that point, there's going to be a recording, so I think it's going to be anticipated some of the questions that would come up on the 28th, and certainly this entire board will want to have the petitioner address all those issues, and maybe even ask staff to weigh in on some of those particular issues. So I just wanted to manage that expectation. There will not be any exchanges during public comment.
Okay, thanks. So why don't we start? Who would like to speak first?
Good evening. My name is Karen Gaither. I live in Heather Ridge. Can you hear me? Oh, thank you. Okay. Hello, hello. I'm going to start over. My name is Karen Gaither. I live in Heather Ridge. Just 3 short subjects I wanted to mention. My journey in life.
Test 1, 2.
Okay.
All right, we're going to do the best we can, okay?
All right. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Here on this side.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Ma'am, why don't you start? Why don't you start, and we'll work the best we can, okay?
Okay, thank you. Nevertheless, I have 3 different things real short. My journey in life is short. I'm in my 80s. I'm concerned about my health. With all of the additional large trucks. Okay. With all the additional trucks and the traffic, I'm concerned that it is going to affect my health. The next thing is, we have a lot of traffic on Milwaukee right now. It seems to me that it's going to be a nightmare with big trucks that we have to maneuver around. I'm going to put it at that. And the next thing is going to affect I don't know how to put this, bear with me. It's going to affect what I can ask for my property if I have to sell it. It's going to affect it because it's going to be affected. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, ma'am.
Usually people don't have trouble hearing me. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor, thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you. My name is Art Stevens. I live in Heather Ridge. Everybody that's part of the crew that's from Heather Ridge, would you raise your hand, please? I'm kind of the de facto leader along with several other people of this particular group. I want to let you know that we have almost 500 signatures at present, and we've been at it for a week. That is in opposition to the recommendation that the zoning board is going to present to you to change the zoning of that parcel of land. We want to make it clear that we are not against the village of Gurnee trying to make the best use of its land that it possibly can. But we feel very strongly, for a large number of reasons, that the best usage of that parcel, which is zoned office, is not to be light industrial and commercial. The presentation that you got earlier is one side of the story, and every story has at least two sides. We are taking that one side apart, and we are doing our research, and we are putting together an opposition packet of materials which will be presented to your staffing people by the 21st, so that you will have an entire week to look at it. I also was going to ask for you to make sure that, after I saw tonight's agenda, I wanted to make sure that there was going to be a back and forth opportunity on the 28th. Mayor, you have assured us that that will actually happen. There will be open meetings, and there will be an opportunity to discuss the issue, because we have come up with a large number of items that are represented in the report that the zoning board got and then acted upon in one night that are not accurate. And you need to hear the entire story. So we need an opportunity to present the opposition report so that you can get a true story of what's going on there. Make it clear, just to make it clear, we're going to ask you to vote no on the rezoning. We are going to ask you to continue with the zoning as it currently stands, which is office. That's fine. We're going to ask you to maintain the quality of that area. We're going to ask you to maintain the type of construction that goes on in that area. And we're going to ask you to not put up a commercial location that will cause light pollution and potential other pollution and is not in character with what that actual stretch of roads indicates. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marvin Hazel. I live in Heather Ridge. I do have several points that I would like to mention, and I'm sure there will be other people with the same ideas, but I am concerned about the pollution of light. They say they're going to reduce the number of lumens by 60%, or to 60%, but without knowing how bright they were to begin with, that number is sort of meaningless, and we need to understand how much light there is. I'm also concerned about the amount of time that the place is going to be open and how much noise is going to come from that in the middle of the evenings. And traffic, of course, is going to be affected. They said 40 trucks.
Sorry about that.
That's no problem. Yeah. told.
All right, we're just working on the. That'd be helpful, thank you.
And we're not limiting just to one of these. I mean, anybody can do that as well, but sometimes if it's organized and we can avoid redundancy, that's usually effective.
We're trying, but we've only had a week.
All right, so thanks, go ahead, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for your time, and I do think that the project is a good project for Gurnee, but maybe the wrong location for the project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen and ladies. My name is Suzette Dilger, and I'm with Spinning Run neighborhood, which is right next to Heather Ridge. And myself and 4 other neighbors, our units back directly to 21. We have a little bit of a buffer of the trees there, but we are extremely affected already by the noise of the traffic. Now, you can imagine, if you could, the problem that it's going to cause with trucks, with noise and lights and diesel. I couldn't have my windows open because I wouldn't be able to sleep. If not by the light, would be by the noise. And I'm saying that there's at least 4 of us that are in this predicament. We face our bedroom windows, sliding doors, open to 21, which means a truck place over there is going to make it impossible for us to sleep and to function. Therefore, I stand with my neighbors and hope that you will do the right thing and vote no to the truck business and that location. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Margaret Rooney. I don't live in Heather Ridge. I live in Fairway Ridge. I've taken 3 trips to see Trans-Chicago and Elmhurst, and I am urging each and every one of you to go see it for yourself. Go unannounced, not so that they can plant a tree in the front, plant a tree in the back, put a decorative fence up. Go see it. I was there just this last Sunday. I saw their shiny new trucks out in front with the cyclone fence and barbed wire protecting it. But I was able to walk back, and I didn't see 100 trucks. I didn't see 200 trucks. I saw more than that. Trucks that they might have wanted to sell, trucks that they were fixing, trucks from Davy Tree, anything, school buses. It looked like a junkyard. We, in the community, have that property to look at that sits low. We will see that. Is that what you want Gurnee to represent? A junkyard? Just for tax money? Thank you.
My name's Bob Deal. I'm not a Heather Ridge resident, but I live across from Lake Carina, and there's a 3-box culvert setup on 21 that allows the creek to flow underneath and east over to those lakes. And I just have some thoughts. Why can't this venture be located just off 41 where there are fewer families and better built roads? You guys implied to the residents of Gurnee you would work to make our lives better. For those of us who live near the proposed site, the mayor and trustees, does it work now? Okay. For the mayors and trustees, you applied to the residents of Gurnee that you would work to make our lives better. For those of us who live near the proposed site, you ask us to accept the increased noise levels and traffic. The box culvert located under Milwaukee Avenue, just west of Lake Carina, is a case to be made. Whenever a tractor trailer or a snow plow blade comes in contact with the level shift between the street and the top of the culvert, the sustaining noise is appallable. The doctor's offices to the north of the proposed site should be of concern because of the elderly visiting the offices, the doctors there. It appears that the village is more concerned with the tax monies and less concerned with the families in and around that area. And finally, what motivated planning and zoning to give this project their approval? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kathleen York. Thank you, Mayor, for returning my call this afternoon. I live in Heather Ridge, and I have done some research. The EPA has proposed new standards for heavy-duty vehicles to reduce the emissions of smog and soot, forming nitrogen oxides and updated greenhouse standards. 72 million people live near truck freight routes in America. They're most likely to be people of lower income. Heather Ridge has been sold as the best bargain in Lake County. And we run the gamut from very moderate incomes to some upper incomes. And we have many, many old people and young people. Now, I want to read just a little bit from the EPA about this nitrogen oxide, I'm sorry. It irritates the eyes, the nose, skin, mucous membranes, and respiratory tract. On contact or with moisture, it forms nitric acid. Oh, that sounds like fun. It causes COPD because these acids form nitrogen dioxide, and I don't know what I'm really talking about here. It is heavier than air in such a way that exposure in low-lying areas can result in asphyxiation. Well, I don't think we're going to be asphyxiated by this, but I think our health is going to decline seriously. Now, I have in my 16-unit court 2 people who already have COPD. How's that going to affect them? How's that going to affect all of my neighbors? I don't see a lot of young people here. I see a lot of people who are hobbling around doing the best they can. And I want to see you make our lives better, not worse. We already have plenty of air pollution and noise pollution. We hear the ambulances, as you mentioned, not only from 21, but from 120. To add all of these trucks, we don't want that, and we don't need it. It's going to harm us. And then you talk about taxes. Let me tell you, the income that the village would make from this company will not cover the medical bills that this will create. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, your board, everyone. My name is Vicki Thetos. My husband Jimmy and I live at 805 Bryan Court, Gurnee, also known as Spinney Run. Our property is located at the intersection of Spinney Run and Bryan Court. The back of our home faces this area that is proposed, this truck company. I stand with everything that everyone has stated before I came to this microphone. I have always been proud. We've been there for 16 years. I've always been very proud of where we live, the people that we live amongst. Is the traffic bad on 21? Yes, it is. Is it annoying? Yes, it is. But there have been so many more positive things that have occurred in our life. The back of our home, again, faces this area that you're proposing, and I can't imagine sitting on my deck. I mean, right now, I can sit in my dining room and look out across this area that you're speaking of, and you know, it's a little calmer. It kind of fits the area a little bit, even with the office buildings that are there. But if this proposed thing goes through, it's just going to create a terrible, terrible, terrible situation. The traffic on 21, as you know, is horrific. I personally just got my car back last week because I was rear-ended by an SUV at the intersection of 21 and 120. It's just my thoughts. I would beg of you, Mayor, your board, please do not pass this. It's unfair. I'm proud to live in Gurnee. I had the opportunities to live in other places, but I chose Gurnee because I felt it was a good place to live, good school district, good board members, good, everything that we were looking for. So I beg of you to please rethink the situation. Do not pass this. Please, please, please. I ask you, my children ask you, my 3 granddaughters ask you that are used to playing on my deck. And I'm sure, I know I'm not allowed to ask any questions, and I'll just make a statement. I don't think any of you would want this in your backyard. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Hi, my name is Victoria, and I live in Heather Ridge, and I live on Clark, and in the Covered Bridge townhomes, for those who are familiar. I can hear the traffic that's on 21, especially at night, especially when it's colder and noise can travel easier. So we're going to hear a lot of trucks where we are as well. 21 already has a lot of traffic. I know when I go to work, I'm around rush hour time, coming home and going to work. Sometimes it can take forever to get in and out of there from 21. If you add a lot more trucks, it's going to be even worse. I also feel like people are going to want to try to get out and get faster out of there and try to go in front of the trucks, which might create a lot more accidents. My dad works for a body shop. They're waiting for parts for cars, so they have stuff that's sitting. So if they can keep up to 60 trucks, go through 60 trucks a day, even if they get through half of them, that's 30 trucks waiting on Monday. That's now 60 trucks waiting on Tuesday, 90 trucks waiting on Wednesday. So as the woman said before, we're gonna have 300 trucks eventually. It's just gonna look like a junkyard. Might look pretty, but it's still a bunch of trucks sitting there. Property values are also gonna decrease. My husband and I know the lady said there's not a young people, but I think we're gonna speak for the young people here. We personally bought in Heather Ridge, one, because my husband does like golf and stuff, but two, because of the way that it looked. When my friends came from the city to see us, and I mentioned this at our HOA board, they were all surprised when they came in, and they said Heather Ridge it looked like it was Lake Geneva. It looked like a little vacation town. It looked so pretty. They're like, oh my God, this is like Airbnbs where we go for like vacation and stuff. And I feel if we have that trucking facility, and if we have this huge sign that you got an extension to be from what, like 18 feet, or I mean, however large to even bigger, to have lights so that the trucks could see it from the expressway, I feel that's gonna ruin the aesthetics also of the community that has been built. And that's been tried to establish over time. And that's just all I wanted to say. Thank you.
The variance was not granted for the sign increase, just to let you know, but yeah. I generally won't comment back, but just so there isn't misinformation out there, I'd like to correct it, make sure everybody knows the facts at least. So, thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Dolter, and I live in Heather Ridge as well. The thing is, this is probably really the bottom line is money, revenue coming in for the village. Unfortunately, and the revenue that's coming in, from what I understand, won't be but about $350,000. I may be wrong, but so that's the money coming in. But when our property values go down, our property taxes will go down, and so the revenue to you will go down as well. So really, our residents and changing that zoning doesn't really make sense. It's not logical if that's the case, because it negates each other. So who wins in this process? The only people that win is the trucking company, Trans-Chicago Truck Group. They're the only ones that win. Gurnee doesn't win. They do. We don't care if they win. They can go some other place and build that. If you go on the expressways, I go to Milwaukee, I see 10 trucking sales companies with these long buildings and trucks all over. That's where they belong, 9441 Tollway. Thank you.
Finally made it. My name is George Serdar. I moved back to Gurnee about almost 10 years ago after being gone for more than 60 years. There are a lot of concerns I have about this, but my primary concern is the environment. And if you put that place in there, that facility in there, it will poison the ground, it will poison the river. We have the forest preserve and the river trail are treasures, and you will harm them if you put a facility like that in there.
Hello, I'm Sally Walker. I live in Heather Ridge. I moved here almost 30 years ago and came from Skokie. You guys, we didn't have a jewel, we didn't have anything. I mean, 30 years, picture that. So we had Great America, but nothing much more. And I've watched it develop into a kind of hip little place to live. So much so when I first moved here, though, I wanted to move back to Skokie because I was freaked out because I came from Chicago. So Chicago to Skokie to Gurnee, kind of a big trip. But when I wanted to put my house on the market, the real estate agent guy came and said, why would you want to move? You live in Shangri-La. And I basically do live in Shangri-La. We have a little sign when you drive into Heather Ridge, it says, welcome home. We have a little golf course. We have a cabana bar. You can go get a bratwurst and a hamburger. You can play golf. You can swim in a pool. You can do, there's workshops and wood shops, and There's a little walking trail. We have the only hill in Illinois where all the triathletes come and train because we have a big hill there. So bike riders come and athletes come and run up and down the hill. And it'd be a shame because I think a lot more people wouldn't come. I do like, knowing that we can hop on our bike and go down the road and go into Independence Grove and go the other way and take the trails. And like the gentleman just before said, it would really affect the wildlife and just the pristine land that's around us. Thank you.
Thank you for your consideration and listening to us this evening. My name is Mary Beth Fournier. I'm a resident of Spinney Run. Our Spinney Run community is directly across the street from Route 21. We face Route 21, and that is our view. That is the view that many of us have in the morning, the evening, the afternoon, when we're all out and about, whether we're walking, running, participating in any of the community activities, because we have many residents that have been there for 30 years. They've been there since the inception. And personally, my husband and I were thrilled to be able to live there. We heard about it. We heard it was a great place to live, wonderful location. 15 years ago, I would have never considered even turning my car into that property had I seen a large truck dealership across the street. Because for me, and I think for most people, I think for most of us, no matter where we live, where we choose to live, we have a checklist. And it generally has to do with all of the items that you're also concerned with on our behalf in terms of what are you looking for in your neighborhood? What makes you want to live there? You want a good home, whether it's a townhome, a condominium, an apartment, a duplex, anything where you're comfortable, you're safe, you love what's around you. What else are you looking for? You're looking for the necessities of life. You're looking for a good school system. You're looking for a place of worship. You're looking for a nearby hospital. You do need a food store. You do need medical facilities. These are all necessities. They're all part and parcel of what a normal residential family area is. It's a big part of the draw for us when we came to Gurnee. We were thrilled to be a part of Spinney Run. It has such a family-oriented feel to it. Neighbors know each other. We help each other. We all are in unison on this proposal that will be made to you as to the rezoning of that lot that's directly in front of us. Every single one of our residents there, every single one, has signed the petition opposing the rezoning from office to commercial. Every one. Every one of our residents had the same reaction if they had not heard about it before. No one could understand why that parcel of land was even being considered for commercial usage. I understand, we understand office usage. We understand if there would be more medical facilities there, even if there would be another residential building there. Cannot comprehend what the purpose or why a truck facility would feel that they would be a necessity to our community. They have 3 locations. One is in Elmhurst on York Street. I know a little bit about Elmhurst. I realize Elmhurst does have to live in unison with commercial areas. So their headquarters, if you Google them, you can see the satellite location. You can see there are residences across from them. There are also, if you continue looking down that block, and for several blocks, there's a whole area that is also commercial. There's some industrial things there. It's retail. It's a whole conglomeration there. So the residents already are used to that. That's what they are living with. Their second location in Shorewood, Illinois, again, if you take a look at that, they are basically off of I-55 and a frontage road, which to me seems like more of an area that would be suited for a truck facility. Their third location, Gary, Indiana, it's off of I-94. It's pretty isolated. There's some forest around it, and I believe right next to them is a hospital. That's it. So those locations make sense. They seem to fit the area where they are located. Our location here in Gurnee, what we're looking at, is not suited for a truck facility. It's not suited for anything commercial. It's suited for another type of structure that would be more in sync with the residential family area that already exists. So, thank you.
This was set up perfectly. Mr. Mayor, esteemed trustees, my name is Dr. Bora. One thing that they tried to tell us when they were here for the previous meeting is that this is not a truck stop. Well, I'll tell you, if it looks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's a duck. This is a truck stop. One thing that bothered me a lot about this is that I went and visited the other doctors that are located in that region over there. They knew nothing about this. There's a sleep apnea section there, which if they can get people...
It's not going to be helpful if the audience is not going to let me be able to hear him, okay? So do your best, and I get the clapping at the end, but I'd like to be able to hear what the person at the microphone says, so thanks.
I guess if they can get someone to sleep through that from 6 a.m. through midnight, it would be quite a progress for them. However, I can't see any of these doctors, and they did not know this. If that was my office, so help me God, there's no way I would stay there. It's impossible to treat people medically in front of a truck stop. That's all I've got to say, because I agree with everything. And the one thing that Mary Beth was trying to say, this is not an industrial area. This is a housing community. Thank you.
I'm back.
You have some rule about doing it one time, 2 times, 3 times, I don't know.
This will be last time. Last time, until next,
That's okay.
next
That's
meeting.
Okay. Go ahead.
What nobody's mentioned is where tractors and trailers go for repairs, the trailers sometimes have hazardous material contents. And if there's a leak, how is that going to affect the residents local to that area?
Thanks.
I wasn't going to do this, but I will. My name is Barbara Stevens. Art is my wife, and together we live at Heather Ridge. We, really, nobody ever complains they can't hear my voice. Art and I came out here in the 70s when Heather Ridge was being built. We came because we were a young couple looking for a place that we could afford to buy. We loved Heather Ridge. We particularly liked its emphasis on ecology and conservation. But we were both working in Chicago, and that was a long commute for us in those days from Gurnee. I imagine for people who commute from here, it still is. We subsequently lived for 20 years in Evanston, and then in Libertyville, where our kids finished high school. And when it was time for us to retire, we went looking for a place where we could downsize. We looked at lots of communities around the area, and none of them held a candle to Heather Ridge. They were all surrounded by parking lots and paved areas, and Heather Ridge and Spinney Run, and even to a certain extent Cobblestone Creek, which is right next to us, have much more of a rural feel to them. We liked what we saw as we drove up Milwaukee Avenue, and because we lived in Libertyville for a long time, we shopped in Gurnee. We knew the area, and we felt fortunate to be able to find a home where we could live here. People have talked about the potential problems with pollution, and they're real. And they've talked about the problems of runoff. The Des Plaines watershed has a lot of trouble with flooding, and it's had a lot of trouble with pollution. And we hate to see this area contribute to that. We've talked about noise. Noise is an issue. Trucks make a lot of noise, and it's disingenuous to say that for only 40 trucks a day is a small number. It's not a small number. And when they're accelerating and they're braking and they're beep, 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 beeping all night long until midnight from 6 in the morning, that's noise pollution, and it disturbs the quality of life. People have talked about the value of their homes. Some of them have invested in this community for years. You heard from some who've been here for 30 years. They wouldn't have stayed if they didn't love the area and love the village. And Art and I are coming to love it too. We've been here now about 6 years. We could live somewhere else, but we like it here, and we'd like to be able to stay. The one thing that no one has really mentioned is the potential for crime. Heather Ridge is a small, safe, quiet community. So is Spinney Run. So is Cobblestone Creek, and to my knowledge, so are the subdivisions at Merritt Club and north of us. This facility will bring hundreds of people from all over the country into our community. And that's not to say that they don't belong here. But when I look at the schematic and I see the potential for showers to be built in that building, I have to ask myself, what dealership puts in showers? That suggests to me that there is a potential that the company, and I have heard, and again, we've had a short period of time, but a lot of people are doing a lot of work to try and get at the facts so that we're dealing with the facts and we bring those to you, not hearsay. But we know that there's additional land that is available, and we understand that the trucking company may be looking at that property. So what we're going to get initially may not look like what we end up with in the long term. And when I think about showers, I think about a truck stop. And when I think about a truck stop, I think about trucks sitting and idling for long periods of time. They have to do that to keep their cold and frozen cargo. They have to do that to make sure that the people who are remaining in the cabs are comfortable. They have to be somewhere. There isn't a hotel there. There isn't a restaurant nearby. Truck stops draw crime. We know this. And we're concerned about having that on our doorstep. The Gurnee Police Department is already stretched pretty thin, as we understand, and we don't require a lot of services at Heather Ridge. We're pretty quiet old people. But that could change. You don't put up an 8-foot fence around your property if you're not concerned about security. And we're concerned about the spillover of that into our neighborhoods. They're concerned about it as far away as up Gages Lake Road at Fairway Ridge. They don't border on 21, but they're concerned, and so are we. Thank you for your time.
So just as a point of clarification, again, just to avoid misinformation, this is not a truck stop. There will not be anybody sleeping or showering at the facility. That comes from the outside. So this is strictly, it's a truck dealership. So I just want to clarify that. So again, it's just not just looking to keep fact to fact, right? So it's not looking like we're not trying to pitch it or not. It's just that you need to know the facts so you can make your decisions accordingly. So thanks. Yes, sir.
It's my first time to be in this kind of setup with the Board of Trustee. And the first thing I'm gonna ask before I make a comment is that, is anybody from the Board of Trustee and the mayor be able to see the Chicago company, Chicago, that one person mentioned? Is anybody of you?
Sir, we're not, we can't interact with you. I mean, you need to make a comment or a statement.
Okay, the reason why I'm mentioning that is that when everybody making a comment, you know, why they go to Heather Reed's, this and that, and they look what's the best for them, for the kids, this and that, again. Even me, I have to look in my place for about a year before I saw that. The reason I'm asking, which you don't like to answer my question, whether you able to see that place already, that one of the lady was mentioning how it's gonna turn out, is that I'm hearing everybody's comments back here going into you, but I like to see, my point is that if you are the one deciding to approve for that place that's gonna be not a truck stop, as you said, is that if you're buying that place, I gotta look in that place how they perform, or what's it gonna be. So to summarize my thing is that we are hearing most of our comments, but sometimes it might not just, you know, and the decision will be unto you. But I'd like you to feel, you know, what we are saying to all of you, that, you know, you're gonna feel that. It's not like you're gonna hear it, you make comments, but you still have to decide whether it's right or wrong. But try to feel that it's gonna be good for this community. That's my comment.
Thank you, sir.
Jim Holbrook. I'm a 34-year resident of Spinney Run, original owner. And I have a couple concerns. And first of all, from that medical complex on the north side of the proposed property, south to Independence Grove, you know, the west side of the Des Plaines River is just all greenway and floodplain. And this proposed truck stop or whatever just doesn't fit, and totally out of character. And also, the property in question, it seems to me, I could be wrong, is a wetland. It's really low. I mean, I would think it would require a lot of fill, you know, to bring it up to grade, at least even to the grade where the medical facility and the fire department is. And I also wonder about, you know, you put all this concrete in for this facility, you know, what are the drainage issues? And, you know, obviously it's going to drain into the Des Plaines River. You know, who knows what kind of pollution that could cause. But anyway, the whole bottom line for me, you know, I have a beautiful view of the wetland, you know, along the Des Plaines River, and I really don't want to look at a truck facility there. I mean, it's totally out of character for the rest of the property along there, the rest of the land on there. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brooks Gerlach. I live at 692 Dunham Road in Heather Ridge. I had the distinction, such as it is, of having the property closest in Heather Ridge to this thing. Well, a lot of people have said a lot of things, and I've got some notes, and they've all said it, and they've said it better than I have, and so I'm just going to skip saying it again. In the way of closing, I'd like to ask you, do you see anybody here saying, give it to us, bring it over by our house, we'd like to have it next to us? I don't think so. I ask for one more thing from each of you. Please look at the video that Trans Chicago has on its website. Someone mentioned before it's a truck dealership. This is not a truck dealership. This is a large conglomerate of activities, repair, storage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'll send each of you a link to your emails if the website will take it. And it's a nice video done by Trans Chicago, and it's there to propose illustrate what they're proposing for Gurnee. You won't hear the noise concerned with an operation like that because there's a nice video music track over that. You won't get the smell. I mean, it's internet. We haven't done that yet. And the video won't show the bright lights of the proposed 20-foot signs or however they end up tall being. So you won't be able to look at the video and hear the noise, smell the exhaust, see the 20-foot or whatever animated signs, but the people standing here will, and they'll see it for every day of their lives, as long as they live here. I appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ingrid Lorenz, and I live in Heather Ridge. And I'm listening to everyone, and it's almost starting to freak me out a little bit about that this could possibly happen. What I would like to say, I know I can't get any answers, is that I don't hear anything positive about this coming in. We, even if we had $2 billion that we would get, but all these people here will be miserable. They won't be able to open their windows. They won't be able to walk around. They can't look at they'll be afraid for the illnesses. It doesn't seem to have any positive things at all for us. So I don't understand why it would even be a second thought for the board to say, well, yeah, we can make some money because maybe we couldn't sell that land before, but now we can. Why would you want to do that to all of us? Thank you.
My name is Ed Jesse. I live in Fairway Ridge, which you haven't heard too much from tonight, so that's why I wanted to come up and say something. I'm from Fairway Ridge, and we have 350 homes there. Heather Ridge has about 1,000 homes. I'm not sure how many are in Spinney Run or Hickory Haven. 36, okay. So I'm sure that in all these areas, it adds up to about 1,500 homes. I just wanted to emphasize to you how many people this will affect if that zoning is changed for this commercial use. In addition to the environment and the noise, the pollution, the traffic, all of that, but this is affecting over 1,500 homes. So I just hope you're aware of that and take that into consideration. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sue Kwiatkowski, and I'm in Spinney Run. The one thing that has not been addressed this evening.
Maybe if you stand right next to the microphone.
Okay.
There you go.
Is that better now?
Keep on
Okay.
going, sorry.
Okay. One issue that was, I'm not going to bring up all the other issues that have already been discussed. What I want to bring up is the repair work that will be done until midnight. I live on Bryan Court, which is the one that is directly in front of the construction, the business. So if you're working until midnight, you have to have the bays open at some point. The doors are going to be up, the lights are going to be on, the noise is going to be going on until midnight. There's no privacy, there's no way to get any rest at all. And that's my only addition to this.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kenneth King. I'm from Spinney Run. I don't live too close to 21, but I can hear the trucks all night. And the one thing I want to point out that nobody has mentioned is there is a large contingency of coyote and deer between Spinney Run and Heather Ridge. The deer come across the road to get water from the Des Plaines River. Now, if trucks are starting to run all night until midnight and 6 in the morning, are you going to have a lot of deer, I think, splattered all over the road? And another point I want to make, I don't like the name Chicago anyway, Chicago Trucking. We're in Lake County. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
The objection is noted, so.
Good evening. My name's John Duncan. I live in Spinney Run. Couple of comments I'd like to make. I challenge every one of you, it was mentioned before, we happen to drive a motorhome, Freightliner chassis. We pull into Freightliner dealers. They are a hub of activity 24 hours a day, even though they're going to be closed for 6 hours. I would challenge any of you, and I would ask you, as part of your due diligence, to please go and sit and look at one of these facilities. There's one straight north on I-94 at Ryan Road, Freightliner dealer, which this facility is proposed to be, along with Isuzu and Western Star. So I think that needs to be part of your job and the zoning board's job, because it was clear at the zoning meeting, many of those people had not studied the data. They did not know the number of parking spots. It's 335 parking spots. That seems like a lot to me if there's not going to be trucks. So I think, again, I just wonder if we're being misled potentially. I'm not saying that, but I think we all need to do our due diligence, and I challenge you to that. The other thing that I see and that I understand is that the taxes coming in from this for the sale of parts is going to be something like $250,000 to the city. That's a rounding error in a $94 million budget. And all of the work that has to go in, the police force, the snow plows, the pavement repair, sewer, extra work on the sewer system for runoff. All of those things have to be absorbed by that low tax money. So why are we doing that? Why do we have to fill every piece of land, in open land, in this beautiful town with business? Productive business, I agree. It's a good thing for us. But again, what's the return per square foot, per acre on that property with the minimal amount of taxes we're getting? So I think those are the key points I have. Everything else has been said before. But I urge you, when you go home tonight, to your homes that I don't think are affected by this, drive by, look at the darkness and see how nice it is. Picture the light that you're going to have there, that we're going to have there and live with. Go by, drive through Spinney Run, drive through Heather Ridge. See what we go through each day when we go out on Milwaukee Avenue and drive and try to exit. My wife's grandfather, step-grandfather, lives in the development also. He's 99 years old. He talks about certainly how bad the traffic is. I mean, it's just unconscionable that this is being considered for a residential area. So those are my comments. Please do your due diligence. Go look. Drive through. We invite you.
I'm Jim Siefkin. I'm resident of Spinney Run. 2 weeks ago, I did provide to all of you a document, one-page document that hopefully you all received. I hand-carried it here that gave you most of what you've heard here, but I have a couple comments that haven't been said tonight, and I hate to say one of them because it's telling you my age, and it's telling you one of the trustees' age, maybe. In 2005, we went through this same process. I don't know if you're aware of that. You should look back in the documents. Jeannie was a trustee at that time. I stood here one night, and I won't make this long. That night I probably did make it long because I covered a lot of different things. But you're the second round to make a decision on that property. In 2005, it was a HVAC distributor that wanted to build, and it was denied by the trustees. and that was really appreciated at that time. The comment that I want to make, though, that hasn't really been said, but Mayor, you made a comment that brings it to light. If it's approved, and when you read my document, if you haven't, when it's approved, things can change. You said it's not going to be a truck stop. There will be no people there overnight, and that's good if it happens. But everything that you approve, if you do, can change in time. You know, in my document to you, talked about ordinances. Right now, they're saying 3% semis. What if that, and this is what I said, what if that's 84% semis in 2 years? How do you control that? How do you look at what you approve for them, and how do you enforce that so that it stays at that limit if it were approved? You know, whether it's landscape, whether it's traffic, whether it's the type of business they want to do, you know, please consider what could happen in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. So there'll be an opportunity, and there can be more people that talks tonight, but you have another opportunity, like I said, on the 28th, and again, it's a tentative date, but it's 2 weeks from tonight, and there'll be a presentation done by the petitioner. Then if there's a specific opposition document, and there's one person that makes a presentation, that's fine, but that doesn't stop other people from making comments that night either. It can be much like tonight. I think as Attorney Winter indicated, there'll be some more back and forth because the petition will be present, and there'll be opportunities for when the petitioner makes the presentation, and then there's comments or the opposition, as you guys say, is that making your presentation, then the petitioner can respond and answer questions, and we'll try to work that out so that it's relatively a productive, calm interaction, best we can. And you guys have done a great job tonight. I just appreciate your coming out, being mindful of what you've said in terms of not duplicating things. And I think, as that one gentleman said, we get your heart. So, and like I said, we've got a tough job to do. And again, it's just understanding the process, and that to me is oftentimes the battle, is understanding how the process works so you don't feel like something was done behind your backs or misrepresented, and that's why it's important to us for you to have the facts best you can, so that you don't come out thinking that it's going to be a certain type of development when it wasn't that really at all. So, so thanks again for coming tonight, and I'll say going, gone. Is there anybody that would like to say something else, or are we set? Sir?
Basically, my name is Roy Blackfield. I've lived here forever. I've owned a bunch of different houses here. And what's interesting about this zoning board, I believe there were only 5 people at this meeting. 2 people voted against it, so 3 people have caused all these issues for everybody in here. So I guess it's very important to go to zoning boards, but I never really considered it. I did when Gurnee Mills went in, or when they did Almond years ago, because I didn't want them following a bad, like, Waukegan type building for Gurnee Mills. We did all those different areas, like the berms and so forth. We put the signing in. But this thing, I missed the meeting, but the more I hear about it, there was 5 people, not 7. And there's normally 7, but only 3 people voted for it and 2 voted against it. I realize you had a quorum, so you could do that, but do you think all these people should be affected by those 3 ladies that voted for it? It's pretty crazy, I think. And I'm hearing through the village now, there's a lot of different areas in the town, like over on Hunt Club and Gage's Lake, they want to put a gas station there. And that doesn't fit in with that area at all. What's going on with the zone? Is it the board now, or is it the zoning? And I know you can't say anything, but does everyone realize only 3 people agreed to this? Yeah, it's pretty crazy, so. But anyway, hopefully we have 1,000 signatures, or 2,000. I think only 4,000 people voted. So do we have to get 4,000 people to sign our petition? You know, would that send a big enough thing? I'm not a lawyer, so I just don't see it fitting in with our community. So don't want to talk too much. I've talked at
Thank
every
you.
meeting lately. Thank you.
Thank you tonight for coming out. So we have you can stay for the rest of our meeting if you like, or you can all depart and go back to your homes. Right? Why don't we take a couple-minute break? That's a good idea.
License. Earlier this year, we made a separate license for tobacco establishments, and tonight, staff is recommending a separate license for hotels. Give you some background. Basically, smaller communities in the past have not necessarily licensed hotels. However, with recent trends, not necessarily in our village, but just in our area in general, it has been noted that there are, unfortunately, more criminal activities that are occurring in public places or public businesses. And so we've heard about, particular incidents that happen at shopping malls, and certainly law enforcement is aware of that, and all of us are aware of that when we're watching the news. And so, that has really resonated within the municipal community, and I can tell you that the recent movement in this area is it's really the rule now to consider hotel licenses and not the exception. In terms of background, one thing that we can point out is we actually have a fair number of hotels. We have 12. We are kind of a regional tourist destination, and so the safety of our overnight guests are very important to the village, and so that's another reason for the village at this time to be considering this ordinance. By way of background, I do want to point out that the industry itself really already has established industry standards because of the nature of this business, because a lot of the hotels are members of franchise or have flag relationships with bigger oversight. This is an area where there are already standards regarding registration and some safety measures. We're going to talk about that tonight, but I actually would propose to the trustees that there really already is a baseline, and what I will tell you is that the hotels are already aware of certain safety measures. The next item I have on this particular slide is what hotel license would do is it would codify those standards and make them more uniform. And then the next item here, why is that important? Because we do receive calls for service at these hotels, and it is very helpful that if the police, are called out to a site or a business, that they are familiar with the safety procedures that are being in place, and that they are a stakeholder in making sure that those regulations are being covered. Finally, licensing procedures do increase accountability. So right now, the hotels, they have their policies, but they don't have the force of law. If the village passes the licensing ordinance for hotels, now we have a ordinance that provides these things, and actually, in many respects, that will help the hotels themselves, because when they have to convey their policies to their employees, they will now be able to say, not only is it our policy, we must do that to be in conformance with the village code. And so those are some of the issues that I wanted to present to you in terms of background. If we can go to the next slide, let's talk specifically about the ordinance in front of you tonight. And there's really 4 areas that the ordinance focuses in on. There's many sections about how you apply for the license, and those sections really trace what we did for the tobacco license. So a lot of the ordinance is how you get the license. I'm just going to focus tonight on some of the requirements. And it's really 4 different categories, 4 different sections. We'll start out with section 22.310, and that's talking about building and facility safety measures. We'll talk about that. Secondly, we'll talk about hotel registration regulations that are outlined in the proposed ordinance under section 311. Third, we'll talk about occupancy regulations. That is something that I'm going to tell you that in the past, the village hasn't had occupancy regulations, but certainly the hotels have had that. We're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. And then finally, the ordinance does create a duty for hotel authority personnel. To be able to enforce these requirements, you ultimately have to hold someone accountable. So when it's a liquor license provision, ultimately there has to be a provision that says if you sell the alcohol to the minor, you're on the hook. There's accountability there. You can't say, oh, I wasn't trained, it's my employer's fault. And so this item and this concept of a duty of a hotel authority personnel, and we're talking about a desk clerk and others, that is discussed in section 313. So if we can go to the next slide, we'll spend some time talking about each of these areas. Again, in the area of building safety, there's really 4 major areas. The ordinance talks about securing doors, and these are doors that are outside the lobby area. So these are secondary entrances, and for the most part, the hotels are aware this is a security risk. Again, we want to have some uniformity so that we know that the doors are being monitored in similar fashions. This actually sets out a time period in which the doors would actually be secured and would require a swipe or a key entrance. So that's pretty apparent. Video surveillance, I can tell you that a lot of the hotels already have video surveillance. And this provision certainly supports the need for that. That does memorialize activities, and as we, go through our ordinary affairs of life, we're certainly aware that we're being videotaped more. When you go into public buildings, if you go into office buildings now, it's very common down in the city that you have to sign in that you have security. And then the third item here, signage. Maybe again to strengthen this, there is studies that show that the more you make people aware that there are village regulations and that, for instance, video surveillance in the public areas, in very public areas like the lobby, it's not a bad idea to post that, to let people know when they're checking in that there's that surveillance. And then finally, lighting. Again, how effective video surveillance is depends much on lighting and equipment. Now, I will say that although the hotels currently have these building safety measures, the ordinance provides that upgrades may be necessary and that the village is actually granting a period of over a year to implement some of these changes if it's required. And we do anticipate there would have to be some upgrades, maybe even some capacity of how long they would keep the video tape. I didn't put that in this slide presentation, but the ordinance clearly says that 21-day retention period is what is being asked under the ordinance. So if we go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about registration requirements. A few years ago, we did, this board, or a board, passed regulations regarding registration. This is going to strengthen those regulations because it's going to be part of a license. But it has some new features too. This ordinance actually identifies the need to have a responsible person in charge of the main desk for registrations. And so it does say to be a desk clerk on duty. Now, there are, at the time, registrations are permitted at the hotel. So it's not necessarily going to be 24/7 for each hotel, but in large measure, it will be. Also, each hotel already is maintaining a guest register, but again, this ordinance sets out that to say, if you want to maintain your license in good order, you're going to have to perhaps add some information or make sure that you're tracking all the information that we've put in the ordinance. And the same goes for maintaining uniform guest information. There's some prohibitions that we've strengthened here as well. We want to make sure that we can't legislate that there only be one price, because we know that there's different marketing services, so you can't do that. But what the law clearly does say is that you can't, we can prevent property operators from bartering or not getting fair compensation for the room. And I don't think that's a big issue, but it has come up in the past. Also, it's really a function of other laws, but minors, they don't have the capacity to enter into contracts, so we do make it clear that you have to be 18 or older to rent a room. There are some workarounds that if you're in a group and whatnot, but we cleared that up. And then finally, as part of the registration information, up to this point, the village currently requires that the hotel be shown photo identification. Now, and it's been my practice or my experience when I go to a hotel, they always ask to make a copy of your driver's license and a credit card. In the ordinance as proposed right now, that would be added, that the desk would actually make a copy. And I'll explain the purpose for that in another slide here shortly, but that is a departure from what we currently have. If we could go to the next slide. Dave, is the next slide coming up? Okay, there we go. All right, hotel occupancy regulations. So right now, there is a building code that would limit how many people could occupy a given space. But with the licensing ordinance in place, when a hotel receives their initial license, they're going to have to submit the number of rooms, and they're going to have to submit what the overnight occupancy is allowed for those rooms. So depending on how many beds are in a room, that will dictate that number. And so this is going to spell out those limitations more clearly than what we currently have. There's, right now, we have to consult the building code in part. Along with that is visitors. So one of the concerns is parties that occur, maybe underage drinking at the hotel, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And so a lot of communities have identified this as another issue that should be part of the regulations. So if a room has enough room or it has been registered to have, let's say, 2 occupants, there's 1 queen-size bed, then if visitors are there past the, during the visiting time, look, this will give some authority for the hotel management to say 10 people are too many people to have in this room. We've registered that number with the village as part of our license, and so now we have the authority to enforce that ordinance. Your friends can come out to the general area, but they can't be loud and noisy in a room. So that's another limitation, along with some limitations on the hours for visitors. We understand that people will be checking in at all times, but again, I think a common situation that can occur, and maybe we've all experienced that, there's a loud room on your floor, they're celebrating something, and there seems to be a lot of people. And at this point, the hotels follow their policies, and they direct those folks to be quiet or to go to the lobby or go to different areas of the hotel. But again, this would be another opportunity to give them more more support to support the enforcement of their policies. Also, there's some prohibitions. I mean, loitering really is already a prohibition, but we've put that in the ordinance. Obviously, hourly rentals are not permitted. One thing that has come up in staff discussions, and we have addressed this, is we want to make sure no one lists a hotel address as a permanent residence or a mailing address. And again, that is to really address some issues that apparently has occurred in the past. If we go to the next slide, this is the fourth area. This is in section 313, where we talk about the duty of a hotel authority personnel. And basically under section 1A, it is now an affirmative duty that it is unlawful for any hotel authority personnel to consent to, facilitate, cause, or allow, or encourage a nuisance incident. Well, that requires us to define nuisance incident, and that occurs in the very first section of the ordinance proposed in front of you. And so why don't we go to that section right now. The next slide here will show us what are nuisance incidents. And I think the trend has been to list these in the ordinances, because you might assume that the desk clerk knows what some of the state laws are for hotels that are renting rooms, but maybe they don't. And that's one of the processes set forth in this ordinance, that if the police are called out to a hotel on a frequent basis because there are criminal events that are occurring, that's going to give an opportunity for the police to work with the hotel and their staff to make sure they understand what are illegal activities. Now, again, these are listed alphabetically, so, aggravated battery. Actually, if batteries occur in a public place, the statute does elevate those to an aggravated status. But the one I'd point out on this slide are the last two: criminal sexual abuse, unlawful hotel rental for consumption of underage drinking. A number of years ago, there were some pretty terrible tragedies that occurred where minor drinking was allowed at private residence. The result of, due to the outcry, the state passed legislation that says now that parents, if you knowingly allow minors to invite friends over and serve them alcohol, those parents could be subject to a Class 4 felony under certain circumstances. Well, it turns out that when they made those changes, they also made that change to apply to hotels, because they understood that some of the past practices might shift to hotels. And so we've indicated that here in subsection I. And so how does that work out? Well, if the desk clerk sees young people with cases of beer going to a couple things going to happen. When the police are called out to that location, the police are eventually going to ask to see the videotape to see whether the hotel had been taking the security measures that they should have. And if they did not, that would be a basis then for one of our detectives or one of our police officers to say the hotel had violated the provisions that we're passing tonight. That's also something that's going to be required as part of the registration of guests. This has not been something that's been required in the past, but now the village is requesting that the person who checks the person in has to be identified, because we don't want to be chasing who did this. We want to actually address the problem. And so if people are not following the rules, the police are going to be able to find out, and they'll be able to address that. So those are the nuisance incidents. And then I guess we've got one more slide here with some more definitions here. Again, some are probably more common than others. Dave, if you, yeah. So under N, possession and manufacture, delivery of controlled substances. Fentanyl, is plaguing our society, and that's a very serious offense. And so if if people are using drugs of that caliber in the hotel rooms. You know, if there's circumstances that visitors are coming late at night when they're prohibited, that gives an opportunity for the desk to say, I'm sorry, you know, we're not allowing a guest at this point. You can call the person if you want, you know, if they want to come out and meet with you, but, you know, we're going to police, you know, the desk here. And if there's a pattern of that, if they recognize the same people, I think, you know, everybody's going to be diligent to make sure that that's not happening. A couple of the other ones is, you know, sexual abuse, prostitution, and if there's what appears to be gang activity, those are other items, along with really most of the ordinances that are passed. They use this for demonstrative purposes, to alert the employees that you have to be aware of these activities and make sure they're not occurring while you're working the desk. If you see things that suggest that that might be the case, be vigilant, and don't necessarily, we don't want you to wait for the people in the room to have it get out of hand, to have to call the police. You have to intervene in those situations. If we go to the next slide, the ordinance then provides, if we make it a legal requirement, then there can be compliance monitoring. Currently, our police, you know, we don't have a direct role as to whether a particular hotel has a policy and whether it's being followed or not. But once it becomes a local ordinance, the police can do that and they can make checks. Now, the thought is that if the checks, if the hotel isn't experiencing criminal activity, it will be a very friendly check to say you've got to make sure you're getting the photo ID. You have to make sure we know who's working the desk. And, you know, no tickets have to be written for that. But if there are a lot of calls and there's still not compliance, that's when tickets are going to be written, that will be written not only to the individual that's working the desk or the responsible person, but they will be imputed to the hotel. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to really just finish up with this, because this gives you the teeth of the ordinance and how this will be more effective than what we have right now, is that under this ordinance, if there is a violation and the police come out to a hotel and they find out that this could have been prevented, then the police officer will be able to write a ticket. It will be returnable for a hearing. It could either go to court or it could go to the hearing officer. So the hotel is going to have due process. They'll be able to pose any defense that they think they should present, but ultimately there will be a determination as to whether they have violated the provisions that are now in the new licensing code. And we want to let those businesses know that if you pick up 3 nuisance incidents within a 6-month period, there are consequences to that. That could lead to a suspension or revocation, or if you had 5 in a year. Now, we understand that the hotel sizes are different. So there has to be the connection between the criminal activity and the nonfeasance or malfeasance by the operator that they're not following the rules. But this is currently an approach that has been adopted by some other municipalities, literally within the last year, and that's what's being presented tonight. In addition to a real effective enforcement measure to be able to revoke a license, for that first offense, for instance, penalties could be imposed, even, you know, just to show that progressive form of enforcement, so that both the village and the hotel understands the seriousness, and that both entities have to work together to ensure safety within our village. While we're at it, we do understand that there could be some lease arrangements, and there, quite frankly, if somebody was running an institution where maybe, you know, they're no longer, they understand that their days are numbered, that's a very dangerous situation for the village. And so we we've also included an emergency closure. I don't think that that would be utilized very often, but there is a possible scenario that if we had a very bad operator that was non-responsive, that Mamie had decided that they were not going to be in business for very much longer, you can imagine even a 30-day period, a lot of bad things could happen. And so that's been included in the ordinance. So I would just close by saying that right now, tentatively, the village would like to present this on the 28th for passage and to become effective January 1st. And again, a lot of thought and a lot of work with staff has gone into addressing this issue. So if there's any questions, I'm here now, but in the next 2 weeks, let me know. I can respond to them. That basically is the licensing provisions that are being proposed.
So it's on, we'll go to my right. Are there any questions for Trustee O'Brien?
Really comprehensive. Thank you for putting that together. I think it is necessary. I did have two questions. I forget what section it applied to, but what about an agency that provides hotel rooms for homeless? Doesn't that become their address, and isn't that kind of a bartering system?
So what we've done right now, and it's currently within our ordinance, is that we restrict, so hotels, and there's a little different treatment for extended stay, but hotels that do not have a kitchenette, they cannot be rented for more than 30 days, and then that person cannot rent at that same location for another 30 days, because the issue is just that the unit is not equipped for someone to live there. And now we do understand that business engagements can take a period of time. They would have to explore an extended stay at that point.
I missed that part, so yeah, that makes sense.
It is a hard 30 days. And so for bartering, the instance that I heard, and I mean, this is just anecdotal, sometimes, a handyman might be helpful and, can I stay here while I'm doing the work? No, you can't do that. You have to be a guest to be able to stay there. And what we don't want is, that kind of, that has an effect a little bit on the relationship as to whether they're a guest or not. And what we want to make clear is we're only renting to guests. We're not renting to your workforce. They have to become guests. I'm not saying that that would be prohibited, but we want to make sure that all guests are registered the same way.
And one other little one. For the guest registry that can be reviewed at any notice, is there any assumption of confidentiality when the people are filling it out?
So we wrote that out. Well, so it is confidential. So our police are not going to be broadcasting that information. Okay, so there is a confidentiality provision on that. And the way it's anticipated is that that's going to be checked on an on-needed basis, and it's going to be targeted, because what the police are going to be interested in is their follow-up investigation to criminal activity, and that's going to be useful for them, and that's why it's designed.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Trustee Thorstensen?
Thank you, Brian. I'm really pleased to see that these security requirements will be enacted. I do have one question, and maybe you kind of already answered it. I was thinking on page 6 about the complaints, and that it would be 3 incidents within a 6-month or 5 in a year. And I was wondering, are we being too lenient? And I know that you've done this in comparison to other communities and what they've implemented, but possibly the emergency closure then allows us to act differently if it's...
Yes, I mean, we'll still have that option for the emergency closure, because, we've experienced that with a liquor license. The business was going out of business, but yet they were basically turning over, the establishment to groups to rent it out, and they weren't following any of the rules. And so there is that possible scenario that we thought That could happen with a hotel. Maybe a little less likely because hotels generally, because of the capital involved in the premises, you would hope that that would never happen. But, the numbers, the way we have it now, some ordinances talk about criminal activity, and I don't want to suggest that just because the police are called out to a hotel that they're going to be cited. The police are going to look at the protocols and see whether the incident could have been avoided, that basically because staff didn't follow the protocols, something was allowed to happen with a guest that should not have happened. And so these are numbers that are very similar to say, for instance, Arlington Heights was the community that passed something similar to this earlier this year. And so I think there's confidence that we're at the right place right now. And again, I don't envision that the thought is when the first incident occurs, we will grab the attention of the hotel and work on the solution. So there isn't a second incident or a third incident. And so that they see and we see if there's disturbing trends, and so that they know how to respond.
Trustee Ross.
You kind of answered my question, but it's based on what other communities have. You've looked at that and then gone with our police department. But I was just wondering how it affects tourism, if you've heard from the tourism group.
Well, again, I think we're relying basically on the industry standards right now, because we're not, this proposal doesn't introduce some radical changes. I mean, the high-end hotels are very security conscious. Well, they all are security conscious. And what I would say is, I suppose some hotels have more financial ability to have more sophisticated surveillance equipment and whatnot. But so the hope here is that basically that there is that baseline, that we have found that area where we know all the hotels will be effective and able to participate. We don't want to have hardships that they aren't able to comply.
To my left, anybody have any questions? Trustee Bomas?
With the emergency closing, who is going to be the determinant? The police department, the hearing officer, our village administrator?
Okay.
Where does that?
Real good question. So basically, the way the ordinance is written, for the revocation, that would be the village administrator. But understand this, the way the ordinance is written is it's really a threshold based on prior offenses where there's been findings of liability. So that when a hotel gets to that point, they're not going to hash over a year's worth of history on whether they did or didn't. They are going to understand that they had a hearing for each one of those offenses. And so they'll know where they stand in terms of the possibility of being threatened with a suspension. And also, out of the interest of time, there's also a provision in the ordinance that says at some point, the parties could voluntarily enter into an abatement agreement. Basically, if there's a special circumstances with a hotel, that maybe there has to be some additional provisions added to address problems that they're having, that's another option before we get to the more extreme penalties of revocation and suspension. Another thing that I should mention, because it was not in this presentation, but we are also going to add that if a hotel does not timely remit their hotel taxes, their license could be suspended for that, or they would not be able to renew their license. And unfortunately, I can share with you that with the pandemic, that has emerged as a potential issue. So that is going to be something that's added. It's going to be added on the 28th, not only to the hotel tax ordinance, that will be a rider to this, but that will be part of this ordinance as well.
Trustee Woodside?
Yeah, a question, just the hotel authority personnel, that is not the licensee, that's a broader role?
So it is a very broad definition, and basically we've listed the licensee, but we're telling the licensee that if you're hiring people, the desk clerk will be a key person with that. If they have any security guards, those people would constitute that. It's very broadly defined, okay? It's not going to necessarily be, the cleaning staff, but it could include hotel managers. It could include it's a very broad definition. There's a difference in the sense that those people become responsible to the licensee, and their malfeasance or nonfeasance can be imputed to the licensee, just like it is with the liquor license. So what would happen is that's correct. That's correct.
And I think this is a great ordinance. I think it could really be useful, especially nuisance properties. And that most of the provisions in this ordinance are best practices and responsible hotels are meeting these already, right, is what I'm understanding. And just to Cheryl's point, is input from the good actors in the community, is that being sought in getting feedback on the provisions of this to see if there's any kind of hardship that might be problematic if we're not
Yeah, and again, I think, that's something that we can work on. We wanted to make sure that we were heading in the right direction, and that's something that can be done, I think, very easily, because we know the 12 applicants. We know who they are, and I'm sure to some extent there's already a working relationship with all of them. There's a relationship with all of them.
Trustee Gurnee?
I too think it's a great ordinance, because it requires that the hotel, how do I put it? It requires that the resident of the hotel be responsible for their actions. It requires the hotel to hold them accountable, and it allows us to hold the hotel accountable. So it provides a structure all the way from the bottom to the top. And I think you get a better result when everybody understands what the rules are. A lot of times, you go to one hotel, you go to another, you see one's a little loosey-goosey and the other one's very strict. And you kind of go, is that how we do this? And then when the problems occur, there's no rules to enforce. I think this puts that structure in place, and I think we'll all get a better result as a result of it. So I'm glad to see it, and I think the village did a very good job of putting it together, researching it.
Good. Anybody else? We good? Thanks, Brian. Appreciate your time. And I think if there were some questions from the trustees, probably best to run through.
Yeah, run through me.
Right?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So let's see, on to no old business.
Correct.
On to new business, approval of ordinance 2022.
63.
Adopting the 2023 to 2026 strategic plan for the village of Gurnee. Pat?
Sure. So as the trustees know, I've been working on updating the strategic plan throughout 2022. Included resident surveys, focus groups, interviews with staff, the board, fellow taxing bodies, worked with REP Consulting on that. Turned out to be a solid plan that staff's excited about. We've got 24 strategic initiatives listed in there, each with up to 7 action steps, so there's a lot of work to be done to implement this plan. We'll be working, some of the stuff's already in progress. Other will be forthcoming in the future. Staff will also be working on regular progress reports to the village board and community like we had done with the previous strategic plan, which resulted in getting a lot accomplished. So the final document is before you for consideration tonight. If approved, we'll work on getting it up on the website and then communicating it out to the public so they're aware of it, and we'll know kind of what the focus will be over the next 3 to 4 years.
Any questions or comments to my right? To my left? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee Balmas, second by trustee O'Brien. Roll call, please.
Garner.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmas. Thorstensen.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
6 aye.
Motion carries. Approval of ordinance 2022-64, adding one Class 2 tobacco and alternative nicotine products license, primary sales by amending Section 7.8 of Chapter 7 of the Gurnee Municipal Code entitled Tobacco and Alternative Nicotine Retailers. Lava Smoke Shop, 5572 Grand Avenue. Pat?
Sure. So Lava Smoke Shop has applied for Class 2, as the mayor said. That's primary sales. Looking to locate up by Timothy O'Toole's in that building. Currently have 5 Class 2 licenses issued. You recall back in January of this year, Attorney Winter helped staff create the tobacco licensing requirements in the village code. This followed a 2.5-year moratorium on the establishment of smoke, vape, and hookah shops that we had in place. Police department took a look at the application and didn't find anything in it to disqualify them from a license should the village board wish to issue one.
Any comments or discussion? To my right? To my left? Trustee Garner.
Will there be a limit on the number of shops that licenses that we would issue?
We have a limit currently, and each time the board decides whether or not to add to it. So it's currently at its limit, and this is one additional, so, right.
I have a comment.
Yes,
I
trustee Ross.
I really thought that it meant that we had enough smoke shops and that we didn't need to have any more. And so I would think that, obviously this has gone through the approval process and it's fine for this time, but I would hope that staff would from now on say, we have a limit, we don't need any more.
Mostly on me. I just, yeah, that's more on me than on staff. I wouldn't throw it on staff for that. I struggled a bit with saying no to, like, say, for instance, if someone said, stop having mattress stores in town or something like that, it'd be like, where do I stop? So I get smoke is different. So, yes.
And vaping and all.
Right. So I struggled with this one, so, yeah. So that's on me. Any other comments? Motion? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by trustee Woodside,
Second.
second by trustee O'Brien. Roll call, please.
Garner.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
6 aye.
Motion carries. Item number 3, approval of group dental insurance renewal with Delta Dental, 7.6% rate adjustment for a 12-month period beginning January 1st, 2023.
Yeah.
Pat and Christine.
I'll summarize it quick. There's not much to say. So we've been with Delta since 2014. They've never had a premium increase during that time. Those days are over. As we've seen with our other health renewals, they originally came back with a 1-year renewal at 9.6. Christine went back and beat on them a little bit, got them down to 7.6. I mean, it's obviously inflation, and then some of the claims that we've had have been the driver behind it. If you look at that 7.6% increase, it's still less than what we were quoted by a different dental provider in 2014. So again, it's been 8 years, haven't had any increases.
Almost 9.
Almost 9, but unfortunately those days are over. So we're looking at 7.6. Staff is happy with the coverage provided, so there's no complaints in that department. So staff is recommending to consider on with Delta. So if Christine has anything else or there's technical questions, she can handle those.
Yeah, again, facing the same trend as what we've seen with our health and our life insurance. Unfortunately, COVID keeps slamming us. I think dental offices were one of the last groups to come back online in terms of medical care, so there was a lot of delayed treatment, pent-up demand to get back to the dental office, so it's not surprising that the sheer number of claims increased. We did see our claims dollars also increase along with the number of claims that were actually applied to the plan. So that was a little bit of a spike. So hopefully as we keep moving forward, that will balance out. Again, looking at the market, it wasn't really viable for us to do that this year, given that, every carrier is going to be facing the same issues with COVID claims and very volatile economic situation. So, we're going to hold on that thought, and if we need to, we'll market next year. It will be tough to get a plan as solid as our current plan in any market, so that's always a consideration to take into account. So sometimes even if the cost is high, we might get the same quote for less benefits. So we always are trying to keep that balance so that we maintain good, solid benefits for our employees. But we did actually try to get a 2-year quote guarantee. So our broker did go back. Fortunately, they increased it to 14% for 2 years, so we decided to stay with the 7.6 for 1 year and see what we can do next year. So the math didn't add up, so we are recommending the 7.6 for 1 year.
To my right, any questions for Christine? To my left, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by trustee Ross, second by trustee Garner. Roll call, please.
Garner.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmus.
Aye.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
6 aye.
Motion carries. Last item is the public comment. If anybody would like to make a public comment, you could step up to the microphone. There being none, is there a motion to?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee Balmas, second by trustee Garner. All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned.